Mr. Crumpton, you made me smile, and you touched my heart, because fundamentally the work that we are doing has to be about reflecting the lived experience of our residents. People all over the city are hungry for opportunity. They want to be seen. They want to know that elected officials actually see them and think about them and the work that we do. And Mr. Crumpton, you reminded us of why that's so important. So thank you so much, sir, for your words and for being here. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great day in our city. I want to thank Alderman Dow for hosting us here. There's a lot of people to thank, and I know I will miss many of them. But importantly, we're here today because our city council supported our vision for making sure that we make affordability a priority for the city. So I want to thank Chairman Osterman of the Housing Committee, and I want to thank every single alderman who supported our budget and understood the necessity of making this real for residents in our city. We're sharing today two exciting announcements that move us one step closer toward our vision of a more equitable and inclusive city of Chicago. We envision a city where every resident, no matter age, income, identity, ability, have the opportunities and the resources to lead comfortable lives in the communities they call home. Providing and expanding affordable housing is a fundamental right and component of making that vision a reality. We've been committed to this from day one. And let me take you back a moment. Back in 2019, in my administration's first round of low-income housing tax credits, we issued the funds for 11 developments, creating 1,083 units for a total of $398 million in investments. That round of funding set the tone for the Department of Housing to continue using every tool in our toolbox to desegregate our city and uplift our communities. And let me just pause for a moment and say, the Department of Housing exists because we made it so. The Department of Housing had been relegated to a side thought previously in other administrations. We knew how incredibly important it was to stand up a Department of Housing. And let me just say, our incredible commissioner, Marisa Navarro, will never get the credit that she deserves, but this is her day. I would tell a story about how Marisa made me beg a little bit when I asked her to be the housing commissioner back in the transition. But I'm just grateful she said yes. So when the pandemic came in 2020, it shined a light on existing disparities and inequities in our city. And I've often said that the things that we knew were challenges came flashing through like neon lights. And affordability was one of those things. That's why in our FY22 budget, we make unprecedented investments, folks, totaling $635 million in affordable housing creation and preservation. This investment leverages resources from our $1.2 billion Chicago Recovery Plan, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to drive equitable economic recovery and investment in social and community supports. $1.2 billion in affordable housing is a big chunk of that tri-stat. The Chicago Recovery Plan sets aside over $240 million for affordable housing initiatives, which is already proving to be successful. As a result of leveraging these funds, we're here to announce that the Department of Housing was able to more than double their low-income housing tax credit funding this year for almost a $1 billion investment. This nearly $1 billion investment will create 24 developments across our city, meaning 2,428 units, of which 2,175, so way more than 2/3, will be affordable. All in all, this is the largest private sector-led affordable housing announcement in our city's history. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a big deal. Importantly, 10 of the 24 developments are led by minority teams, and all 24 including a meaningful form of minority participation. This signals that we are creating these resources with communities rather than for communities. And borrowing a page from our Invest Southwest strategy, we're making sure that we're providing opportunities for women and people of color to lead these initiatives in their communities, which breeds more success and more opportunity for them outside of these city-led initiatives. Also, 8 of the 24 developments are in fact located in our Invest Southwest Neighborhood Development Program, which is intended, as you know, and is uplifting and supporting historically underserved communities on the south and the west side. Commissioner Navarro will go into further details on these projects, but I want to express a couple of other points. These 2,100 new units mean that 2,100 more residents and families have a safe, affordable place to lay their head at night and rest, knowing that they will have a secure place to live. Housing insecurity in a city like Chicago, with all the wealth that we have here, should never be a thing that exists. And we've got to step up even more and do our part to make sure that we eradicate housing insecurity for residents in this city. And today's announcements will go a long way in that effort. With the burden of housing insecurity off their shoulders, our residents are going to be free to focus on the things that are important to them, to focus on aspects of their life like work, school, their health, and their families. To get to this day, Commissioner Navarro and her team kept a focus on racial equity. Over the course of 2020, they conducted the first ever racial equity impact assessment in the country, examining the low-income housing tax credit program through that lens. They converted their findings into a new set of expectations for the 2021 Qualified Allocation Plan, a plan that helps DOH direct federal affordable housing funds into the neighborhoods where they are needed the most. Now, if you've heard us talk about racial equity impact assessment, it's because that's the same tool that we use throughout COVID to make sure that we were bringing resources to communities that needed them most. This is what we will be doing going forward. We need to make sure that we're using our resources and directing them using data into the areas of our city that are most in need. So we are in fact reaching our vulnerable residents using data, using science. That's what we must be about. And among these new expectations is the first time ever guarantee that minority developers, as I said, will benefit from low-income housing tax credit. There's also a renewed focus on providing access to housing for particularly marginalized groups and assurances that new developments are accessible to transit and improve outcomes and wealth-building opportunities for residents. As if this new $1 billion commitment and 2,100 new units, again, the largest investment in affordable housing in our city, wasn't already exciting enough. There's more. We have another important housing milestone to share with you today. Over the past year, Commissioner Navarro has been working with the city's law department to acquire a massive site in Pilsen, one of our city's most rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods, and one where we need to make sure that longtime residents can stay in their neighborhood. Today, in collaboration with Alderman Sigcho Lopez, who is here with us, we're announcing the acquisition of more than 6 acres of land at 18th and Peoria in the heart of Pilsen. And we will be preserving that space for a minimum of 280 affordable housing units that our residents can call home. This is the single largest parcel of vacant development property in Pilsen, and we know the importance of bringing more affordable housing to that community. This site builds upon 2 anti-displacement measures passed by the City Council earlier this year. These measures ensure that longtime residents in areas experiencing gentrification and the possibility of displacement can actually remain in their homes and share transformative improvements that are occurring in their communities. We recognize that gentrification is taking a devastating toll on long-term residents who are being driven out of their homes because they aren't able to afford to stay in their communities. I live in Logan Square, which is ground zero for this kind of displacement. But shame on us if we don't learn the lessons of those experiences, and we have. And we will continue to make sure that we do everything possible that as a neighborhood's fortunes rise, the people who have been there through thick and thin get to stay and enjoy the neighborhood. That is why I'm deeply grateful to all involved in this acquisition to help us stop the trend of displacement in this community. On that note, I want to remind you that DOH is once again opening applications for its emergency rental assistance program for tenants and landlords financially impacted during the pandemic. And once again, I got to give credit where credit is due. We are leading in the country and making sure that we are getting emergency rental assistance dollars out the door to residents in need. This need is not going to go away, but we've got to make sure that we reach people and that we can help them with this assistance. And I got to give all credit again to Commissioner Navarro and her incredible team, because they are doing it every single day to reach our residents. So thank you again, Commissioner. So the new application includes $102 million from the American Rescue Plan and offers up to 18 months of rental assistance and utility payment assistance. The second ERAP round and the applications will close soon. So please get the word out. Saturday, November 18th at 11:59 p.m. Make sure that you are telling everybody that you know that there's another round of funding that's available, because we want to make sure that anyone that we missed the last time around, because the need is so great, that they have another opportunity to get assistance. So if you're a landlord or a renter who was financially impacted during the pandemic, please call and apply chicago.gov/rent-help. chicago.gov/rent-help. I'm grateful to the Commissioner and her entire team for overseeing this program and working tirelessly to make sure that we are meeting residents' needs. Let me just say this in closing. You know, sometimes when you stand on this side of the podium, there's a lot that comes your way. And people will say, well, I don't think the mayor has a plan. I'm not sure what's going on. Violence is raging out of control. And yes, we have seen more than our fair share of violence. But the long-term play has to be investing in people and places. We are seeing the manifestation of way too many decades of neglect in our city. And as the saying goes, the chickens are coming home to roost. But we have tools at our disposal that we can make the kind of investments that are going to make people feel like they have ownership in the geography under their feet. It starts, ladies and gentlemen, with giving people hope. And if you don't know where you're going to lay your head at night, if you don't know how you're going to be able to take care of your family, that's when the insecurity and the instability comes. Affordable housing is key to our public safety strategy. Make no mistake about it. And these investments are transformative. They will make a difference, and they will yield dividends for decades and decades to come. I'm grateful for all the hard work of everyone involved who has made this moment possible, and I'm grateful to be the mayor of this incredible city. Never bet against the city of Chicago, because we are making a difference in the lives of our residents every single day. Thanks again to the members of City Council. Thanks for your leadership and support. We have more work to do. Our residents need us, but we are making a difference, and we've got to keep moving forward. Thank you. And with that, I invite the wonderful Commissioner Marisa Navarro to the podium. Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Mayor Lightfoot. And good afternoon, everyone. This day has really been years in the making, and we're so excited to be here with you. One of our basic beliefs at the Department of Housing is that people who need a subsidy to live affordably should have just as many options of where they can live as people who do not. So today, to be able to set in motion over 2,100 of those options for our fellow Chicagoans is a really, really gratifying day. And it really starts with our racial equity impact assessment that the mayor talked about. When I first came to the department in 2019, one of the first principles we established was to do our work through a racial equity lens. And as a city, we've been doing low-income housing tax credits for years, since the late 1980s. We had a lot of material to study and figure out how we were doing as a team at this. We worked with Chicago United for Equity. We worked with enterprise community partners. We met with LIHTC residents, developers, investors, advocates. We examined our data by race, and we took stock of ourselves and said, where are we falling short and what do we need to change? I'll tell you the single most glaring thing that jumped out to us was that up to this point, we had been silent on the question of who actually develops affordable housing. And in a city and in a country with the kind of racial wealth gaps that we have, we knew that was simply unacceptable. So our first recommendation in the racial equity impact assessment is that we ensure that people of color, developers, professionals, service providers benefit from and build wealth from the creation of this housing that we're talking about today. That's all part of our ongoing work to examine the outcomes of our work by race and adjust accordingly. So the mayor mentioned this was the first in the country. There was no roadmap. We needed some help, and so I want to thank Katanya Raby, who jumped in to help us with this. Yes. And our friends at Enterprise Community Partners, our own Department of Housing staff, Managing Deputy Cindy Soto, Aaron Johnson, and Deputy Commissioner Tamara Collins, who then translated our recommendations into our call for proposals that we issued. So what did that yield us? If we look at the map, and which we can't see all that well in this light, we didn't know, that doing this work was going to land us in a year where the mayor was going to be able to deliver the Chicago Recovery Plan with the help of City Council. And so, as you've heard, we more than double the number of investments. And I do want to stress for us, though, this is really about more than number of units and the amount of the money. It's also that we're using our resources to reduce Chicago's segregation, not maintain it, that we create affordable housing near transit, that we coordinate with other investments and other priorities like Invest Southwest and the Chicago Housing Authority, and that we're reaching some particular populations that cannot be overlooked, and you'll hear about them in just a moment. So we had 4 tracks in our call for proposals, and the idea was really to ensure options across neighborhoods and market types. That's our vision, that's our mission. So one of those tracks was opportunity areas. These are higher income areas where there are typically very few options if you need a subsidy to live affordably. Another track was redevelopment areas, those that have been disinvested in for decades. And in those spaces, we really stress the use of first floor as commercial to combat the racial redlining, the retail redlining that we've experienced for so many years in those communities. And I want to give a couple examples. Sacred Apartments, for instance, plans to include a grocery store. The Regenerator will have an on-site health center, urgent care, and a pharmacy. Trinity already has a healthcare component. These are amenities that our communities desperately need. We all know that housing alone does not make a community. And in transitioning areas, these are areas where we're losing affordability and where communities are concerned about losing longtime residents to rising rents and property taxes. So in addition to the developments that you see here, I would just say another major win for transitioning areas is acquiring the site in Pilsen that the mayor talked about. And then finally, preservation was our 4th tract, and it's just as important as creating new units. Otherwise, we'll never see a net gain for folks if we don't hold on to what we already have. So here you can see we're doubling down on places like East Garfield Park, Chinatown, South Loop, where we are right now, and really importantly, In partnership with the state and the development team at POA, we're preserving Island Terrace directly across the street from the Obama Presidential Center. And I want to thank Deputy Mayor Samir Mayakar, who personally got involved to ensure that this building remained affordable when it was recently sold. So a couple more points. Invest Southwest, it matters to us that we're coordinating in areas with other investments. Of course, our flagship investment, 1/3 of our developments are in Invest Southwest areas. And with that, I do want to thank my partner in all things community development, Planning Commissioner Maurice Cox. Thank you. With the Chicago Housing Authority, 5 of these developments are in partnership with the Chicago Housing Authority to help in our shared mission of creating vibrant mixed-income communities across the city. And I do want to thank CHA for being such a great partner. CEO Tracy Scott is here. Thank you, Tracy. And finally, this is our last map, equitable transit-oriented development. So here's why this matters so much to us. Yeah, crew. All right, we're getting to you. Here we are. So since 2013, the city has had a transit-oriented development ordinance that allows for things like greater density, less parking, affordability incentives near transit. But together with our partners at Elevated Chicago, who do a great job of keeping us honest on this topic, thank you, Roberto Requejo, we recently calculated that of all the transit-oriented developments approved from 2016 to 2020, 90% of them were on the near north side, the near northwest side, West Loop, downtown, 90%. You would almost think there was no red or green or blue line or Metra on the south or west sides, but we know better than that. And that's why this matters, right? 75% of the 24 developments we are announcing today are transit-oriented, and of those, 67% are on the south and west sides. Where people do ride the L, and they do ride the Metra, and more would if they lived in walking distance, right? So we're very excited about this one. So here's the whole list now of awardees, and congratulations to all of you. I have a few very important people left to thank, and they are the Department of Housing staff who've made this all possible. 2 people in particular whose fingerprints are all over this today are Managing Deputy Brian Essenberg and Deputy Commissioner Tamara Collins. And Travis, I can see you there. Can you see if everyone can just come in the doorway? Can you get everyone in the doorway? Yeah. So this is our multifamily team, our construction and compliance team. And you know, those of us who work for the city are sometimes not so lovingly referred to as faceless bureaucrats. But my colleagues all have faces. They underwrite complex multi-million-dollar deals. They are construction specialists, they're licensed architects, they all have skills they could use elsewhere. And I'm so grateful that they use their skills to all of our benefit in the city and for the city. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to Eugenia Orr, who did absolutely everything to make today possible. So as we finish up, I want to do one last thing, and that is invite 2 of the teams up to speak. So us planning and housing nerds love our maps, but we actually know this is really about people. The people who will be able to live affordably as a result of this work, and the people who put their heart and soul into developing these spaces for their fellow community members. The one downside to funding this many developments is I can't talk about all of them, so we're going to hear from 2 who are both going above and beyond. The first up is Chicago's first ever development, co-developed by and focused on Indigenous populations. Representing the development team of Full Circle Communities and Visionary Ventures at 2907 West Irving Park is Shelley Tucciarelli. President of Visionary Ventures, which brings affordable housing and economic development to Native American communities. Shelley?
Is Josh and Lindsay and Mary, if they could come up, I'd really appreciate it, because without their partnership and their support, this project would not be moving forward. Shikoli, everyone. I am truly honored to be here today as a leader and an advocate for our Chicago Native American community. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for this great opportunity to do the first affordable housing rental development for our Native American community here in Chicago. It is important to acknowledge that Chicago has always been Indian land. And with that, I want to acknowledge the Council of Three Fires, the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Ottawa. Chicago's Native American community has always been an important part of Chicago's rich cultural fabric. As Marisa had mentioned, I'm Shelley Tuzzarelli, and I'm a tribal member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. I serve as the Executive Director for Visionary Ventures, a Native American nonprofit. I want to commend Marisa, Navarro, and Sandy Soto for expanding their outreach efforts to include our underserved Native American community. We also want to thank Alderwoman Rosanna Rodriguez and her team for the support for our vision, and look forward to continuing to work with them through the community-driven zoning process. Previously to working with Visionary Ventures, I worked with Illinois Housing Development Authority, IDA, for over 20 years financing affordable housing for the state of Illinois. I actually managed the low-income housing tax credit program for several years. The major misconception is that all Native Americans live on reservations or in rural areas, but only 30% live on reservations, and the rest of us live in urban and suburban areas. Our Chicago Native residents face a unique affordability challenges. 3 out of every 5 Native households are renters, and more than half are rent burdened. Yet providing necessary housing resources for Native Americans in Chicago remains a challenge because there's no federally recognized tribal nations in Illinois to help provide support. We see this project as an important forward, creating stability for our families, creating a safe, culturally relevant space for our families that can continue to pass on important cultural teachings, where much needed services and programs can be provided. The development will be located close to Native American services and programs, and is one of the main reasons we chose this location in the 33rd Ward. We will be working closely with these Native American service programs to help provide services and programs for our residents. The site is also close to Horner Park, where there is a native mound structure called the Coiled Serpent, which will officially be opening in 2023. And also the proximity to the river is just as significant, as our ancestors traversed these waterways, building their homes, trading and sharing stories. This development will be completed in partnership with Full Circle Communities. I served on their the board of directors for Full Circle for over 6 years, so I saw the wonderful projects that they were able to complete, and also the full array of services that they provided for their residents. We will also be working closely with our Native American community on the design elements of the building, as well as the community spaces and the services that we'll be providing. We will continue to do outreach in our community and the surrounding area where the development will be located. I want to thank Visionary Ventures Board of Directors for their ongoing encouragement and support. I want to thank Full Circle for taking this journey with me. And I want to thank my significant other and confidant, Kevin Harrison, for his support and for listening about this project for like the last 3 years. So, and thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, and Commissioner Navarro, this is a project that is truly a dream come true for our Native American community here in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. We're so excited about this development and grateful for your work. Finally, I want to welcome the team behind the Regenerator project, which is about much more than the residential component that we are funding. This proposal covers so many of our priorities. It's focused on housing the reentry population. It's an adaptive reuse of a closed Chicago public school. It was a Chicago Prize finalist. It's about community health care and so much more. It checks all of the boxes in the history of boxes. So from the development team of Gorman and Company and the Regenerator team, please welcome Rami Nashashibi of Eman, Cecile DeMello of Teamwork Englewood, and Aisha Butler as well.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings. Could we also call up our team, if Ron from Gorman and Senna and Alia, Teresa if you're here, and Dion from E.G. Woods, because this has truly been an extraordinary collective community effort. Mayor, you may recall a few months after the horrific death of George Floyd and the uprisings across this country, you heard from a group of very passionate people who were directly affected. We're talking about individuals who collectively had served some decades in prison, young men who were caught up in the cycle of violence. In the shadow of a school that was recklessly closed with no vision for what it would mean for the impact of the community. You heard in the voices anger, you heard in the voices despair, but you also heard in those voices hope, and you heard inspiration. And to your credit, you weathered skepticism, you weathered a little bit of cynicism, and you spoke very passionately about your own brother. And that day, you gained the trust of some and the willingness to proceed by others. It was the bold leadership of the commissioner, who also came down to Englewood, walked the blocks with us, saw the individuals who were already committed to building on vacant land, in vacant buildings, who are now on the precipice of celebrating the first fresh corner store built by and for the community in February, and part of a larger vision. And now, thanks to this extraordinary initiative, we sit on the precipice of being able to break ground on a project that will take a vacant, vandalized 60,000 square foot facility in the heart of Englewood and turn it into a project called the Regenerator, with over 40 units of housing for returning citizens and young men caught up in the cycle of violence, with a holistic health center, with jobs and a set of opportunities that we hope will be a source of life. Because it's not just And it's not just about what is being built, it's how it's being built. And earlier I mentioned to Brian, who was in the trenches with us back in the day with NHS, that often community groups like ours are often sometimes seen as just the go-to folks for the front lines of emergencies. And in fact, we do that. 60,000 pounds of food last year, health care to those who need it the most. But we're also visionaries. This woman from Rage and this woman from Teamwork Englewood, Cecile and Aisha Butler, along with Dion, came together over several years ago, came to our office and envisioned what $100 million in the investment of 63rd and Racine could look like to revitalize schools, open up closed Green Line stops, and bring a fresh market. And because of that vision, we have now a project called Go Green on Racine, and we have the Regenerator, and we have extraordinary developer from Gorman and extraordinary support from Teresa and a phenomenal staff. Senna Saeed, I want to celebrate her with her work with Ram from Gorman for all the extraordinary work. And I want us to be able to turn the mic over to a woman who has been doing this work about visioning what repurposed schools can look like. And this is really one of those realizations of long-term work. So give it up, please, for Cecile from Teamwork Englewood.
Thanks, Rami. You covered a lot of the stuff I said I was gonna cover. I'm Cecile DeMello. I'm the Executive Director of Teamwork Inglewood, but before that, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I raised my family in the beautiful Inglewood community, and it's important that folks understand that Inglewood is full of families, senior citizens, young people, people that are just like all the other people in the city of Chicago, but need more opportunities and more investment. I know in the news we've been hearing about the black flight that's happened in Chicago. Affordable housing is one of the important things that needs to be addressed to stabilize those of us that still live on the south and west side, but to also bring more of the black and brown families back into our city that were pushed out by violence and disinvestment. The Regenerator is one of those projects that does that, stabilizing housing for returning citizens. Teamwork runs a reentry call center, and we see this all the time, that returning citizens struggle to find stable housing, to keep their jobs, to see their families again. And this is something that we have to work on in the local level, but we also have to work on the federal level about how returning citizens are alienated for housing prospects in the city of Chicago and across this country. They are important to our community. The Regenerator, like Rami was saying, is so important, and it's about thinking outside of the box on how we think about housing, but bringing those wraparound services to those vulnerable individuals in our community. They need health care, they need education, and they need jobs, and the Regenerator brings that into a housing development, which takes this vacant school that was a sacred space before, educating our children and helping to transform families once again. I want to thank everybody, our Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman, who's been very supportive on this project. Our Inglewood family all up here. We do what we got to do for our community. When people don't show up, Inglewood, we do what we got to do, right? And this was one of the projects where we felt we got to get together, we got to get after. We were trying to go for that Chicago Prize money, but it's cool, just okay. And get it together. And again, I saw on the map about equitable transit oriented development. One thing this group is coming after is opening up that 63rd and Racine stop that's been vacant for years, since the 90s, and needs to reopen so more families can have access to the jobs downtown, as well as to more education and quality of life access across the city of Chicago. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How do you top that? My name is Harry Osterman. I chair the Housing and Real Estate Committee. I'm going to close out today's remarks, but just to say this. Today's a historic day in Chicago. Today's a historic day, which is a down payment on the future of lifting up neighborhoods, providing more affordable housing across the entire city. When you see the map where these projects are going to be, you know that there's going to be families, there's going to be residents like Henry that are going to be housed, that in the years to come they're going to have a roof over their head. It also is a lifting up and an empowerment of neighborhoods. When you hear about the team that we just heard from Englewood and the investment that they're going to make in Englewood, that's a down payment on the future. Young kids in Englewood are going to see that project being developed. They're going to see the possibility of what can happen, and they're going to know that there's a future here in Chicago. And I really want to commend Mayor Lightfoot, and I'm going to go on a limb and say that Mayor Lightfoot is the housing mayor. Mayor Lightfoot has made, give it up for her. She earned it because she puts housing first in every single neighborhood. The budget that we just passed with my colleagues in City Council put millions and millions of dollars towards affordable housing. Today's historic tax credit, this is a historic thing that's national, and it's going to add, because Mayor Lightfoot knows what it means for every single neighborhood. We want to rebuild Chicago. That's what her vision, her values are about. That's where she puts her leadership. And Mayor, thank you very much for all you're doing on the area of housing and everything else, because it ties to safety and rebuilding communities. And whatever you told to Marisa Navarro to get her to be your housing commissioner, thank you for doing that, because we have Commissioner Navarro is an unbelievable leader, and it's not just her. Please give it up for Commissioner Navarro. She's a captain of a phenomenal team within the Department of Housing that is on a multitude of levels, working at building affordable housing, helping people with renters to make sure they can weather the storm and are not being evicted as we look towards the winter months. Her and her team have worked in partnership with the City Council and are really making a difference in every single neighborhood. I will tell you that one thing that unites members of the City Council from all parts of the city is affordable housing. And we work together on our housing committee, but throughout the members of the City Council to create more affordable housing. All of us now are looking at Byron Sitco Lopez says, we want one of those, 240. So, but all of us are unified because we know how important this is for the city of Chicago and what it means. And today's a historic day. The last thing I want to thank is all the housing, affordable housing providers who are here today who make these deals happen. We are your partners. We are your partners. These are complex deals to put together. We understand that. We value all that you do to make these things happen, and we want you to know that we appreciate it. We know the hard work you put in, but we also know that you recognize how important this is for the history and the future of the city of Chicago. So today's a down payment on the future. We've got more to come, but I want everyone to celebrate today, and let's get building housing. So congratulations to everybody. So I'm going to kindly ask everyone to go out into the wonderful courtyard and enjoy the sunshine. Mayor Lightfoot is going to take a few questions from the press, but I want to thank everyone for being here today. Congratulations, and it's a wonderful day for our city.
Hi, Mayor. Good afternoon, Heather.
Will you sign a map, a ward remap that moves opponents of sitting aldermen out of their wards in an attempt to make it easier for sitting members of city council to win re-election?
You like asking me hypothetical questions, particularly around a remap.
Hypothetical.
Well,
We
look,
have two maps that do that, one more than the other.
So here's what I think is the most important thing, is that members of the city council need to come together and agree on a map that is reflective, I should say, of the values that residents have, that they are listening to residents. We have a map that was obviously introduced last week. There's going to be hearings about that, but nobody's got to 41 yet. And what I worry a little bit about is the distraction of a referendum. A referendum is multiple millions of dollars. And what I don't want to see is, from now until June 28th, a proxy war on other initiatives because people are still angry that they didn't get to a consensus on a map. So I'm happy to say that I think discussions are ongoing, and I'm going to assist where I can. But really, the city council needs to come together and move ahead so that they can face the biggest challenges that our residents have. And you heard a lot about that today. People are concerned about affordability. They're concerned about jobs. They're obviously concerned, top of mind, about public safety. Those are the things that we need to be focused on as a city. And the elected officials have got to be united and focused on those issues. Remap is so much insider baseball. I understand, obviously, why it's important, but we've got to get to consensus, get to 41, and then move on to take care of, I think, the more pressing issues on our residents' minds.
Also funded with the American Rescue Plan, along with the affordable housing investments, is the basic income program.
Yes.
Why hasn't that rolled out yet? What's the hang up, and when can people expect those checks to start flying?
As I indicated previously, we have been working with members of the city council, listening to advocates to make sure that we craft a criteria that is going to reach those people that are most in need. So stay tuned. I expect to be making an announcement about that shortly.
From Marianne Ahern of NBC5, Chicago is set to pass or has passed 800 homicides this year. Your reaction and what can be done to stop it?
I want to be clear, we're not at 800. And obviously, we're working every single day to end homicides in our city. We don't want to see that number rise above where it's at. But look, I've said this before. This is a very challenging time, and I think the crime wave that we've been experiencing, other major cities across the country, like New York, like LA, St. Louis, DC, Atlanta, Denver, and places that don't normally see high levels of crime, places like Austin, Texas. All of us are challenged in this time. Every single part of our public safety infrastructure has been dramatically impacted by COVID. We're continuing to do our part. We're focused on gangs. We're focused on guns. Those are the biggest drivers of our shootings and our homicides. I will say, though, a couple of data points, because it's important, I think, for people to hear this. Number one, every other crime category that we focus on, the FBI index, every single one of those is at 25-year lows. Now, we're not taking a victory lap as long as our homicide and our shooting number is up, but it's important to put all of this in context. The other thing that is important is we're seeing our detectives solve more homicides, 350 this year to date and counting, than they have in the last 16 years. That's important. So people are working really hard, making sure that we make the right kind of investments. But importantly, we've got to continue focusing on holding people accountable. I don't want to live in a city where we've got murderers, attempted murderers, carjackers, rapists that are out on pretrial release. And I'm not saying lock people up and throw away the key. They're entitled to a presumption of innocence. They're entitled to their due process. But when people have a demonstrated history of violence, and when they're now charged with another crime of violence, those are the very people for whom detention makes sense. Now, some of you in the media, when I've raised these issues before, say, oh, the mayor's just trying to pass the buck or point fingers somewhere else. No. But we have to hold people accountable. The criminal justice system has no purpose if people don't believe that there's going to be accountability. And when you are charged with murdering somebody and you're out on the streets again 20 to 48 hours later, you do not feel like the criminal justice system is ever going to hold you accountable. And what that message sends to the victims of crime, to the witnesses of crimes, is that they shouldn't come forward. They shouldn't cooperate because they're putting themselves at risk and their life on the line, and then the same person who's wreaking havoc in their community is back on the street. And yes, this is a message for the judges in the Cook County criminal court system. You've got to do a better job of holding people accountable. Our residents are living in fear because there are too many dangerous people on the street. Our police officers are doing their part. Our federal partners are doing their part. But they got to hold them accountable by making sure that violent, dangerous people are off the streets.
Thanks, Mayor. Alex Thitkin, Daily Light.
Mayor,
Alex.
on this light tick announcement, could you talk a little more specifically about the intersection between this and the Chicago Recovery Plan funding, and in particular whether this level of investment is going to be sustainable after that recovery money runs out?
So I'm going to invite Commissioner Navarro to come up, but this is part of the recovery plan, the Chicago Recovery Plan. It's the heartland of our affordable housing efforts. And yes, the investments that we're making today, they are one time, but they will be lasting, permanent legacies of the Chicago Recovery Plan. And I don't know if Commissioner Navarro wants to add more to it, but we don't make investments that we can't pay for. We don't make investments that we can't sustain. And this is part of that recovery plan. And we are really, really excited about the amount of money that we're able to put into it by virtue of the fact that we have the ARP funding and other dollars. Commissioner?
Hey, Alex. So I would note, we've got in the updated press release that you should have gotten today, we have more detailed numbers after our press call Friday where we rolled out kind of exactly how much was 9%, how much was 4%, how much was public loans and tax increment financing and Chicago Recovery Plan dollars. And so together we kind of add all those up, but we did categorize them for you so you can see.
As far as how much in particular is going to be TIF, is that?
You want it further broken out in terms of how much is multifamily loans, how much is TIF, how much is Chicago Recovery Plan? Yeah, we can disaggregate it further.
Thank you. On sports betting, Mayor, a two-part question here. First, why add a 2% city tax onto betting revenue? The teams are saying that any additional tax is going to, depress demand and be counterproductive.
I don't agree with that. We've done our analysis, and look, the city of Chicago has the ability to really open up opportunities for sportsbook as a result of the legislation that was passed by the General Assembly back in 2019. We bear the responsibility for all of the residual work that's going to be done, any infrastructure work that's required, any regulatory oversight. We need to make sure that there are sufficient resources for us to be able to do it. So 2%, it matches what the county was able to put on the sports book bill. I think it's only fair that the city of Chicago also obtained revenues as a result of this new venture by the sports teams.
So then on the other side of it, opponents of the ordinance have pointed out that you opposed originally that part of the 2019 bill.
That is actually not correct. What I was concerned about is making sure that we, as the city of Chicago, had the ability to license and regulate where the sports book was going. That was my consistent concern, and we got inserted into the legislation some controls that allow us to be able to control where this is going as a result of zoning. That's where I've consistently been. So I've heard the opponents say that. The opponents have said a lot of things. They said that there's going to be a 10% or more leakage of sportsbook that will cannibalize our casinos. We've asked them, give us a study that says that. So still waiting.
Maxwell,
so I think we're in good shape to move this forward, and I look forward to making sure that we get our fair share of the revenues from this.
If I can ask one question on behalf of AD Quigg, real quick. Question on behalf of AD Quigg. She asked from Cranes if we might see a New York City-style vaccine mandate for all employers anytime soon.
We will not see that here in the city of Chicago, and frankly, I question whether or not that's something that's going to sustain what invariably will come as judicial review. But what I will say is this: I am encouraging employers of all types to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to maximize safety in their workplaces, like we have done, and mandate a vaccine. I'm heartened by the various venues across the city, whether it's restaurants, bars, or sports stadiums, that have said you need to be vaccinated or show a negative test in order to come in. The pandemic is real. It has not gone away. We're watching with great interest the developments and the science that's being done around the Omicron variant, but the surest tool that we know to maximize safety is for people to get vaccinated, and we're going to continue to drive home that messaging.
Maxwell from Block Club.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, sir.
So staffers at Carnegie Elementary today were grieving the death of a colleague to coronavirus. Do you need me to take the match down?
No, I think I caught you. I caught up with you.
They have demanded that the city implement vaccine and testing sites at both Carnegie and cities across the school. Will you call for CPS to offer vaccine doses and COVID testing at all district schools? And if so, do you have a time frame or a budget for doing so?
So I thought the CTU statements today were quite interesting. And, you know, frankly, it's a little distressing that when somebody has died, that they're using that as an opportunity to make and score political points. And I'll let you draw your conclusions about that. I am very confident in the COVID mitigation plan that CPS has in place under the leadership of CEO Martinez. We've significantly increased the resources around testing. We've done a significant amount, and we will continue to do so. Obviously, the CTU agreed with us that all CPS employees should be vaccinated, at that as a mandate. So I'm not sure where they're coming with this latest thing, other than, again, to score political points in the heart of in the face of a tragedy. But we're going to continue to be focused on what's important, making sure that we maximize safety in our schools, as we've done from the very beginning of this pandemic. When our students came back last spring, we're going to be looking for other opportunities to partner at the local level. We're following the best practices from across the country. I have total confidence in CEO Martinez and Dr. Arwady and her team at Public Health that's been partnered up with CPS really from the very beginning. And I think, again, the proof is in the pudding. Of course, we're going to see cases happen, which is why we keep placing such an incredible emphasis on people getting vaccinated, people who have been vaccinated, getting their boosters, making sure that we get our kids now from 5 to 17 vaccinated. That's where we should be focused, and not on some of the things that are frankly CTU inspired, but not driven by science and data, and not showing partnership with us on making sure that our school community is as safe as possible. I have very great confidence in the work that was done last year, over $100 million in mitigation efforts, the additional resources that were put in this year. Partner with us, be a part of the solution. That's what CTU needs to focus on.
And does that mean that it's completely off the table to be implementing?
What I'm saying is I think that the
district?
plan that's in place is a strong plan, and if there's any other resources that need to be made, here's the thing that is, I will tell you, a little bit frustrating. You hear from these folks, you don't fact check, you don't look at the science, you bring it to me as if it is a fact that I then have to address. Look at the science. Talk about what the best practices are. And what you're going to see is that we have a plan at CPS that meets all the criteria for best practices across the country. Do not just, as a journalist, I implore you, take at face value what comes out of the mouth of anyone. Do your work before you bring it to me and ask me to validate or not something that some critic lobbing bombs from the cheat sheets sends your way. That's not journalism. That's not what I expect. I hope you guys do your homework and really and challenge the stuff that you're hearing from folks. It's campaign season, folks. So we're going to hear a lot of stuff that comes out of people's mouths. It doesn't make it true. And don't expect me to sit here and validate and say, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. No, you do your homework first, and then you come to me and ask a question.
Can I ask what's invalid about the proposal to make vaccine sites each and every school?
No, what I'm saying is the science tells us and the experience tells us that's not the best way to get things done, because you don't see the level of uptake when you have resources spread that thin. What we've got to do is collaborate with the building principals, with the teachers, of course, with the support staff, and first and foremost with the teachers, with the families and the individual students, and make sure that we're doing things that make sense based upon what the experience is here in Chicago and across the country. So again, I don't need to do your job for you. What I want you to do is ask the tough questions, which you've done for me, but ask the tough questions of the people that you're then repeating to me as if it's the gospel. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you, Mayor.
you.
Craig Wall from ABC.
Mayor, obviously you're aware of what happened around the Bean over this weekend.
Yeah.
Can you just give us your reaction to that? And is there anything more that needs to be done to prevent these groups of kids from coming down and causing mayhem?
Listen, I addressed this issue yesterday. First and foremost, when young people want to come downtown and enjoy their city, we should support that. But what we cannot support and we will not tolerate is young people coming downtown and wreaking havoc. We had some experience with this over the summer. I feel like we had a good plan in place. We're reevaluating what we put in place over the weekend, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our young people can come downtown, enjoy this beautiful city safely, but do it in a way that doesn't impose upon others with violence, with fights, and it's not some of the things that we saw over the weekend. And again, I'm very careful, and I caution you, let's not paint with such a broad brush. We have young people all over our city who are doing tremendous things, who are incredibly talented, who understand and respect each other and respect people in neighborhoods all over the city. But we do have some folks who are acting, as my grandmother would say, acting a fool. And we're not going to tolerate that. And I'm calling upon those parents and the guardians to also step up and do your part. We want our young people to enjoy the city. It is their city, after all. But they've got to do it in a way that is respectful of the rights of others. And if they cross the line, we're going to have to take decisive action, and we're going to do that.
This morning, LaShawn Ford and Fran Hurley held a crime summit.
I'm sorry,
LaShawn Ford and Representative Fran Hurley held a crime summit this morning, and one of the people who spoke at it was Rob Carr with Irma. And he was talking about, for retailers, the two top concerns are no longer, taxes and regulation, it's safety and safety. And he said, they're looking at, Chicago, and they're trying to decide whether it's viable for them to stay. What are your concerns about the ability to, protect the retail environment? And does there need to be stronger penalties, more accountability for, in these cases, many times young people who are committing these crimes if they're caught?
Well, look, the challenges that we're seeing is not a problem that's unique to Chicago. If you look at what's happened in some cities on the West Coast and elsewhere, this is a problem, unfortunately, that's happening across the country. We work very well with our business partners to make sure that we're listening to them, but also to push them. You've heard me say this from this side of the podium before. We've got to make sure that we're working in partnership with our retail partners. We listen to them. We put together, and I'm going to credit Deputy Mayor Samir Mayakar and Deputy Mayor John O'Malley, who've been working in hand in glove with our business partners all across the city to make sure that we're sharing with them information that we're seeing and hearing, but we're also hearing from them. But we've also got to push retailers. Some of the retailers downtown in Michigan Avenue, I will tell you, I'm disappointed that they're not doing more to take safety and make it a priority. For example, we still have retailers that won't institute plans like having security officers in their stores, making sure that they've got cameras that are actually operational, locking up their merchandise at night, chaining high-end bags. These purses seem to be something that is attracting a lot of attention on these organized retail theft units. So we've set up a lot of tactics and measures to make sure that we're being as responsive as possible, including having a lot of resources in retail corridors all across the city, not just in the downtown area, but we need some of these retailers to also step up and be partners with us in this work. And being very aggressive about prosecuting those who are committing retail theft. We've got done a lot of work on making sure that we're trying to cut off the market for the resale of these dollars. Just last week, the Attorney General of the state announced a big arrest. That was done by CPD. That was a result of a tip that CPD got and followed it and then found the merchandise in a warehouse. That was a CPD-led initiative that was announced by the Illinois Attorney General last week. So there is a lot of work that's being done, and we're got more work to do. And we're going to make sure that we remain really diligent from now through the end of the year. Obviously, there's a lot that's happening leading up to Christmas and the end of the year, and we've just got to remain really, really diligent in partnership with our businesses across the city.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. That's a wrap, everyone.
Policing space. Legitimacy has to be part of the criminal justice system as a whole, and individual components of it, and the courts are a critical piece of it. If young people or people who are committing crimes do not feel like there's any consequences for them, then they're going to continue to see the level of brazenness that we see, unfortunately, in some sectors. Again, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. We have young people all over our city who are tremendous talent, who are doing great things, are exceeding beyond all measures. But for that small crew that's not, and that is stepping over that line, we want to get to them, certainly before they take a path that leads to consequences that will affect them for the rest of their lives. But there's got to be accountability. We teach that to our children at the youngest of age, and we can't escape that reality. And when people commit crimes, particularly people committing crime with gun, there absolutely 1,000% must be accountability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just hearing more information about what happened to the person over the weekend. I've always done that. I've gone to the hospital. I've reached out to the families. But fundamentally, we've got to make sure that we've got the resources downtown and doing things. I talked to the team about this today. We got to deter these young people. And again, when you shine a light on what's happening and you let them know that you're visible, that you're watching, you're going to be diligent, it has an impact. And we've got to do a better job of it.